A first-person perspective isn't something that works for every genre of games, but when it comes to horror, there's something about a first-person camera that just makes everything so much scarier. With the action becoming much more immediate, the potency of the horror increases manifold, as players are put into situations where they feel like they're actually there, which really is like a dream for any creative person telling a horror story. In this feature, we'll be taking a look at 15 of what we feel are the scariest first-person games we've ever played. Some of these are out-and-out horror, while others find other ways to unsettle their audiences without being proper horror titles. But they all deserve a place on this list. Alien Isolation. You knew this was coming, so let's get it out of the way first. Alien Isolation captures the feeling of the horrifying nightmare of being trapped with a xenomorph perfectly. Every second of this experience is wrought with unimaginable horror, and crippling fear can take hold of you at any second given how deadly the alien is. The fact that it's that crippling fear you constantly have to fight back against to ensure your survival makes the horror that much more potent. PT. The fact that this short, playable demo of a game that was ultimately cancelled ranks as one of the scariest games ever made speaks volumes about just how terrifying Hideo Kojima's PT was. It was dripping with atmosphere and psychological horror, ingeniously confining players to what was essentially a single hallway, trapped with a presence that could scare the crap out of you with its absence just as much as it could by being right in front of you. It's a shame that we'll never get to see this come to fruition. Silent Hills could have been something really special. Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 decided to take the series back to its claustrophobic horror roots. While doing so, it also made the bold decision of going first person. It was, in the end, a gamble that paid off. The horror of the Baker house and the family that inhabits it would have been palpable in any case, but seeing it all unfold through a first-person camera made it that much more terrifying and unsettling. The Evil Within 2. Though The Evil Within 2 released as a third-person title with a section that was played from a first-person perspective, Tango Gameworks would eventually add the option to play the entire game in first person, and as anyone who's done so would tell you, it's an absolutely incredible experience. The Evil Within 2 is already a game that can be truly unsettling with its twisted sights and sounds, but witnessing it all with the immediacy of a first-person camera turns it into an absolute nightmare. OUTLAST. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call OUTLAST one of the scariest first-person games ever made. It's a game that smartly renders its players completely vulnerable more often than not, armed as you are with little more than a camera that depends on batteries to even let you see much or anything in the dark. The scares themselves can range from foreboding to ones that make you want to jump out of your skin. In fact, there aren't many other games out there that'll make you as jumpy as OUTLAST does. AMNESIA: The Dark Descent. AMNESIA: The Dark Descent is often regarded as one of the best psychological horror games of the past decade or so, and it's not hard to see why. Its brand of horror is unique and oh so terrifying, while the sanity mechanic is something that injects a lot of tension and dread into a game that is already dripping with them. This is a game that gets into your brain like few others can. Not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. F.E.A.R. Alma has become something of an icon with horror movie video game circles, and playing F.E.A.R, it's easy to understand why. F.E.A.R is a lot more action-packed than a lot of other games on this list, being a first-person shooter as much as it is a survival horror title, but it manages to balance those two distinct aspects surprisingly well. From its cunning AI to all the scares to its excellent combat, F.E.A.R is an absolutely mesmerizing experience. Condemned: Criminal Origins. Condemned: Criminal Origins was hardly the perfect game back when it launched, but the parts of it that were good were so good, forgiving the ones that weren't didn't feel too difficult. Condemned can send chills down your spine the way few others can, with the experience littered with multiple scares that'll send your heart racing. It's not the most complete package you'll ever play, but for fans of the horror genre, it almost feels essential because of how well it gets the horror part right. SOMA. SOMA is a game that has the ability to constantly keep its players on the edges of their seat. It's a game that isn't special just because of how scary it is, but also because it backs up those scares with polish and strength in other areas. Its strong sense of atmosphere, impressive voice acting, and tight writing all come together to deliver an experience that's easy to get invested in. And all that only serves to heighten the game's scares even further. Layers of Fear. Many games claim to be of a psychological horror tilt, but very few of them actually put it into practice as well as Layers of Fear does. It's a unique experience that will actively make you uncomfortable and make you question everything, making the horror feel so much more immediate than what most other games in the genre have ever managed to do. It's an absolute gem of a title, and though it's not the most high-profile game on this list, it is certainly among the very best and inventive. Metro 2033. The Metro series is a darling of the first-person shooter audiences, but what's interesting about it is that as far as the gameplay is concerned, its horror elements are much more memorable than the actual shooting itself. Its dark, cramped, claustrophobic environments put players through the ringer almost constantly, and with terrifying mutants and things such as limited resources and scant ammo to deal with, every new threat feels like a deadly one. STALKER: Shadow of Chernobyl. The STALKER series is very much cut from the same cloth as Metro, acting as first-person shooters on a surface level, but really hiding unsettling horrors beneath the surface. Shadow of Chernobyl's stark tone and grim setting make it an experience that was already dripping with atmosphere. But this is also a game that knows how to leverage its atmosphere to the fullest, to deliver some actual meaningful scares. System Shock 2. System Shock was a revelation when it first launched over 2 decades ago, and System Shock 2 even more so. And while neither of these games present an in-your-face horror aesthetic, they're still some of the most unsettling and spooky games you'll ever play. System Shock 2 in particular, though the first one is no damp squib, is an absolutely terrifying romp through its evocative world that'll have you jumping out of your sweating skin nervously quite a lot. DUSK. DUSK is a game that has slipped under the radar since its recent release, but anyone who's played it will tell you that it deserves way more attention than it's gotten. A throwback to classic horror first-person shooters, DUSK is an exciting and terrifying experience at the same time that manages to nail both its horror and shooting aspects with great aplomb. Doom 3. When you think Doom, you don't really think of horror, and that was one of the reasons Doom 3 is the divisive title that it is. But while whether or not going for a more horror-centric tone was the right fit for the series is something that's still up for debate, we can at least agree on the fact that the horror parts of Doom were done surprisingly well. It was a game that was full of moments that can make you jump out of your seat. We're glad that Doom decided to go back to its roots with 2016's reboot, but that doesn't mean Doom 3 gave us nothing worth remembering at all. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, please hit the subscribe button. Also, don't forget to switch on the notifications bell icon next to it. That way you'll never miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching.